Welcome to my virtual campfire. I'm Crystal Kelly. It is times like these that our ancestors would have started telling stories around a campfire, searching for meaning in our existence. We all have our Corona stories to tell. Think of our phone as the warm glow of a virtual campfire. Each week, listen to stories from all over the world about how we, as humans, fit into the vibrations of Mother Nature and the universe. Collectively, let's co-create a future through conversation and storytelling and music. With love. Welcome to episode 5. I'm really excited about this one. In this episode, I listened to Johnny Rolfe tell me about his life below zero, 70 miles north of the Arctic Circle. Now, this is super off-grid. Like, he is living up there completely isolated. National Geographic is documenting his adventure on their show Life Below Zero Next Generation. And Johnny shares with me his behind-the-scenes version of what it's really like out there. Johnny, let us know what it's like to be so far off grid and hunting, gathering, doing your subsistence living. Tell us about it.
Yeah, there's so much to be said about it, really. Yeah, it's been an awesome journey. It's been something I've been striving for a long time. Like it's been years in the making. It's not something you can just do overnight.
Right.
You can't just pick up and head out to the woods. You'll more than likely end up like the Into the Wild kid that in that bus or whatever.
Right.
Yeah,
so hopefully your experience is a little different than that.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. He had good intentions. I don't really remember the full story. I think he had good intentions. I think his mind was kind of where my mind might be, but he physically and such, he didn't really plan too well. So it takes a lot of planning. This is something I've been planning over a decade.
Wow.
Yeah, I wasn't born into this lifestyle, so I had to figure it out on my own.
Yeah. So tell us about that planning and how, take us through the steps of how you ended up north of the Arctic Circle. I mean, I've never heard of such craziness.
Yeah, I've always wanted to, I have this feeling, it must be in my DNA, something that I just can't get rid of. It strives to be self-reliant, and mostly with food, because food is important. It's an important part of my life. And I don't feel good. I've never felt good just buying like a slab of meat that's wrapped in plastic off of a shelf. There's no relationship to that. And I think it's important to have a relationship with the food, speaking for myself only, that I eat. So it's just so many different moving pieces to this puzzle. So it's the diet, it's knowing where my food comes from, it's being self-reliant. Sometimes I think like it's just something embedded in me that I can't shake, that I had to answer this call. And that's where I started focusing on when I was younger. And, I always avoided the 9 to 5. I didn't go to college because none of that felt natural. None of that felt normal for me. So I just kept educating myself, kept teaching myself practical skills. My dad taught me a little bit of hunting, tons of fishing, and I really felt that peace when I was doing those things.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Indiana. It was right between Illinois and Michigan. And it's about like 45 minutes outside Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was some rural land, a lot of farmland. We'd go out and hunt ducks and geese and pheasants and stuff like that. But it was kind of a weekend thing, and I wanted to make it a full-time thing. The food tastes better. Everything just tastes better when you harvest it yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like this is maybe like your sole purpose in life? Or is this just something like, do you think you'll do this forever? Like, what do you?
That's a good question. If you look at my life resume, yeah, it's all over the place, and I like to experience different things. I like challenge. I like to push myself, push boundaries. I don't want to feel safe and secure. As soon as I start feeling safe and secure, I want to switch gears.
Mm-hmm.
And it's living the lifestyle I live now. I mean, it is more difficult to feel safe and secure.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I hear wolves almost every single night howling out there. In the summer and fall, the bears are around. I've had a run in with the grizzly bears, and yeah, you never know who's around you, who's watching as far as the wildlife goes. It keeps me on my toes, and that's what I really appreciate about it. It's a really hard lifestyle to get complacent with.
Mm-hmm. It seems to me that dealing with animals, especially on the level that you are with big mammals, they might almost be easier than people to deal with. At least they're predictable.
That is funny. I say, I say that, and I relate them to other people say, well, why not somewhere warm? I get that all the time. Why can't you do this in some off-grid property in Florida or somewhere else where it's warm? I don't like the bugs. I'm constantly up in mosquitoes and gnats, and there's snakes, and there's all these little things that can kill you, with one bite, one sting. Where I'm at, the shit that can kill me, I can see. It's right. It's large, it's massive, and I feel like I can reason with them. So that's what I like about that. I kind of drifted from your question, but yeah, I do connect with animals more than people. There's no question about that. I appreciate people, but I appreciate animals more.
Yeah. Do you feel like you telepathically communicate with them? Like have you told the wolves this is your area and like kind of?
Yeah, that's funny you say that. I can tell you my first bear story. If you want to hear that, I can tell you that.
I do.
So I had harvested a caribou, and I think they showed a little bit of this on the show, which is called Life Below Zero: Next Generation. So I was by myself. The crew wasn't out there, and I harvested a caribou, and that's what I eat up there. It's my food. So I like to hang the caribou to age the meat. It makes the meat a lot better tasting, and it makes it less tough, etc. So I hung it up. It was kind of late in the evening. Went back into my cabin, went to sleep, woke up in the morning, and I'm looking out my window. And at this time, this was late September, so the sun doesn't come up until about 10 a.m. So waiting for the sun to come up, and I'm looking out my window, and I don't see the caribou hanging up anymore.
Oh no!
And then this was a big caribou. This was like a 350-pound caribou. So I'm wondering, well, okay, where's my caribou? So I grabbed my protection, and Java and I, my dog, we went outside, and I couldn't find the caribou. And thinking, well, what could carry this caribou, right? Like, what could actually and walk away with it? About like, I don't know, maybe 20 yards to my right, I see it laying there, and it's like half dismantled. And a grizzly bear grabbed it. You can see its claw marks right in the side of the hide. It drug it 20 yards, and it punched a hole right through, or ripped right into the rib cage to go for the heart and the organs, because that's what they're after. And it realized out. So it ate part of the haunches and the back strap and left it. And when they leave it, that means they're coming back. So made this caribou its property. I hurry up and I butchered it up. I salvaged most of it. It only ate probably 20% of it. I hung all the meat up high. It couldn't get it. And the next morning, I woke up at about 1 a.m. and I put on the window frame of my little window, and I look out the window, and the bear is doing the exact same thing, looking in my cabin. And we're staring at a big, dark, it was almost black. This grizzly bear was so dark. And I don't have black bears up there. It's too far north. And we're just staring at each other. And it registered that we're looking at each other. So he nonchalantly put his paws down and just kind of waddle away. And I went out there and I had a talk with him. And that's this whole thing you were questioning. And I told him, I was like, hey man, this is my property. You know, you got a piece of my caribou. I'm not going to argue you for doing that. I don't blame you. That's what you do out here. But we gotta draw some lines and boundaries. And it had just snowed a little bit, just like a half inch, enough to see paw prints. And he came back every night, but he never breached about a 60-foot perimeter of my cabin.
Wow.
So he's coming to my actual cabin and looking through my window. He stopped sitting at the front door. He never, every morning I would see his fresh tracks, and he never, for about 7 days straight, he never breached. You can see this perimeter. He had a circle, and it's as if I drew like a line or put up a fence. He never breached it. And so I had this relationship with this bear. We had a relationship, and I felt like a prisoner the first couple of days. I felt like a prisoner in my own cabin. Like, this bear is stalking me, it's stalking my meat, it's stalking my dog. I don't know. But then I turned it into, well, let's flip the script. It's respecting me because it has not crossed that line. So then I turned my thinking around and I've started to appreciate this bear instead of fearing it. And it changed my world. So I went from feeling like a prisoner to feeling like I'm part of the natural world.
That is the craziest freaking story, for one. The other thing that's striking to me about it is that you mentioned tapping into that natural order. And I had an experience in Siberia where I had felt the same thing. It's not the same story, but you know, it was that realization that I am part of a natural order. I am, you know, like we all are kind of connected. Your crew that's there, how many people is it, and how much interaction do you actually get with them? Because I'm trying to figure out, like, are you mostly feeling completely alone as far as human relations go, or, and also how do you have internet?
When I'm up there with the crew, we have a blast. We have a lot of fun. They're awesome. I mean, Nat Geo they're selective, and they picked. I have awesome relationships with them. They have a safety guy that goes with them, because these camera people, a lot of them are very capable, but they didn't go to the lengths that I went to for my own safety, right? Learning how to drive in the bush, what happens if I fall through the ice, what happens if I get by this or attacked by that. They have gained that knowledge through experience, but they don't specialize in it. So they have a safety guy come out, and that safety guy or gal, there's safety gals as well. They just kind of keep an eye. Like, if I'm doing a hunting scene, the safety person will be there, right? Making sure I'm not slinging my gun all over the place, pointing it at people by a mistake or whatever. It's his job.
Yes.
His job is not to protect me. I want to make that clear. He's not I am my own safety guy. They're a football. If the ice was breaking and everybody fell into the water, the safety guy would get out his crew. Okay. You know what I mean? Yeah. Now, being a human, we tend to care. Yeah. I don't think he would say, well, see you later, dude, you know, and watch me drown. But I'm the last person on his mind when it comes to safety. And I am perfectly okay with that. Their safety guy that they send with me goes by the name of Nacho. And he's outstanding. He is the only safety guy that's ever been to my location because he loves it so much. You know, we're super remote, super off grid. It's the most beautiful place in the world. I mean, I absolutely love it. So I feel special that people like the location just as much as I do, for them to keep wanting to come back.
Oh yeah, that says a lot. I mean, I'll share the pictures that you sent me, but the pictures of the Aurora Borealis, it just, like, I feel like the universe is just talking to you, you know, like it's, like, tell me how that feels when you sit there and watch it.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I remember there's one photo in particular that I remember that moment. I laid on my back. It was negative 65 degrees. And I was laying on my back, just staring up at the sky. And I had no sense of the cold penetrating me or what the cold was doing to me, because you're just way by the environment and what's going on. And in that moment, specifically the aurora. And it's insane. Sometimes they move fast, sometimes they move slow. But this particular day, it was just dancing really fast, and it would just swirl and change really, really quick. Yeah, you feel like you're on another planet up there. It's a frozen landscape. Everything is frozen. Everything talks to you. Every single thing out there talks. The lakes, when they're freezing, it sounds like you live outside of like an airport or something, or above a boat. That it's just crashing and thundering as the ice settles. And the trees, they get so cold because they're the moisture inside the tree, right? And it gets so cold that that moisture expands when it freezes, and you just hear trees popping and cracking, like violent shattering. And it's a tree. You hear trees shattering all around you. And then, you know, when the summer comes, the thaw comes, you can see all the sap, you know, the pitch coming out of. You use a lot of that for stuff. Everything out there is alive. Every single thing out there is alive. You're either a very alive, or you're living or dying. There's no in between. There's no like, I'm kind of making it, or I'm dying of old age. Nothing dies of old age out there. You're full of life or you're dead. Yeah, I never thought I would see. We were stuck in, the crew was there, and we were stuck in the negative 60s, like 65-ish for about 2-3 weeks, something like that. They had a plane that needed to bring in extra supplies for them, and the plane couldn't come because it was too cold. Temperature, a National Guard helicopter won't fly either. So if something was to happen, it really opens your eyes. If something was to happen to any of us, I mean, there's no, people ask me about the cold all the time. It's the number one question I get. And I'm still trying to formulate a lot of my responses, because this is all a new experience for me. But I think a good way to respond to that question is yes, my clothing keeps me warm, but I think my attitude, and I think what, like, the vibes, the energy of the land is what's keeping me warm. When you're staring at that aurora, you don't care how cold it is. You don't think about that cold. You feel so alive. You're pulsing with life, right? There's a photo of Nacho wearing shorts, because he was in his tent and he came out and it was like negative whatever, 55, 65, and he's in shorts just staring up at the aurora.
Oh my God.
Don't think about the cold because there's just too much going on. It's just, you hear those wolves howling, you jump out and outside your cabin, or in their case, their tents, and you want to listen to them because it's beautiful. You're not worried about the cold, right? It's not, it's what you want it to be, right? If you want it to bother you, it's gonna bother you. But if you focus on other stuff, the natural world, the beauty of it all, the landscape, the cold is secondary in your mind.
That's amazing, because I'm really into vibrations and energy. A lot of the work I do is energy work, and a lot of what I do is grounding energy work. But what you're talking about is something completely different. You're using much different chakras of your body, and you're, like you said, you're living, you're vibrating with the environment, and that's, I think that's some high level stuff you got going on there, Johnny.
It's pretty wild, yeah. You know, you talked about isolation. You asked me about that, and I think that it kind of ties into some of the stuff that you're saying. When the crew's not there, I'm extremely isolated, and arguably one of the most isolated Americans. I'm very, very far from civilization. There's no neighborhoods, there's no roads, I mean, I am just a speck of sand in a desert. And it's challenging, to say the least. But it's what you want it to be. It's kind of like the cold. And it's very easy for your mind to, we are very, very social. And it's not normal to be this alone. An old time trapper said that I've looked up to, it gave me a lot of influence, said, and I love this line. He said that the mind needs people like the stomach needs food. And it stuck in my mind. And I'm really glad that he set me up for that line, because I went out to the bush knowing from the greatest bush liver ever, his name's Heimo Korth, he set me up with that. And if he didn't set me up with that, I would have went out there a lot more cocky. But I went out there with some of his wisdom, and it taught me that I need to be aware of how alone I am. And it's, your mind can slip so fast when you're out there alone. You don't have anybody to bounce off of. You don't realize when you're like becoming lazy, or you're sleeping in, or whatever it may be, that's not healthy for you. It's very hard to see it because you have nobody to bounce off of. And I have Java, it helps a little bit, definitely. But I could see her slipping. I'm not kidding. Not having anybody else to interact with. When the crew comes, she goes nuts. Mm-hmm. And I've learned, I found myself slipping in the beginning. It was a brand new sitch. It was a brand new experience for me. But I'm the type of person that takes something like that, a challenge, and I use it to grow, right? So I don't, oh my God, this is insane. It's so hard to be alone. I look at it as cool. What can I take from this? What can I get from this? And I turn it around. It's just like the bear situation. You got to flip your mindset. It takes a very, very strong mind to live out there. So I started focusing on everything. I started writing more, and I would read the writing from the day before, and I could see where my mind was yesterday. Okay, it was on track yesterday, and that's my new starting point. So now I got to keep it on track today. And that's the importance of like writing up there. Everybody that lives out in the bush writes. And it's helped me tons, you know. But God, it's so hard to describe what it's like to be that alone. It's so hard to describe. You have a radar in your mind. I was in, I have a property in Homer, Alaska, outside of Homer, Alaska. And that's where I'm at right now, because I don't have internet up there. I have nothing.
I was wondering that. That was definitely one of my questions.
Yep, I'm back for 2 weeks. I resupply and I go back north. I've been back for just over a week, and I'm ready to get up there already. So when I'm here, I've been in my cabin here for 2 weeks on my 10 acres and not seen a human for 2 weeks. And I thought I was prepared. When I went up north, when I hit that 2 week mark, it was a much different feeling, because here in Homer, I have a radar going on in my head, and I know where my neighbors are. I know where people are at. Even though I haven't seen them, my mind feels something knowing they're there. When I'm up, radar's going off and it doesn't pick up any people. So it's like, well, what the hell is going on? And that's, you have like a little pain or a little like crack in your elbow, and you're like, oh my God, I'm dying. And it's like really easy to like freak yourself out. And I've learned to not do that. I learned to let go. I learned so many different things. I learned more about myself in the first week of isolation than I've learned in probably the last 5 years about myself. And I'm not joking.
I believe it. I believe it. I spent 2 weeks alone in Russia, and I didn't have anyone with me that at all. And I did not speak Russian. And I was in a very remote part of Russia where none of the Russians spoke English. So yeah. It was a similar, what you said about you learned more about yourself in 1 week than of your whole life, that I had that exact, I think I even wrote that down in my journal. And I think that I'm really happy you're writing, because you're going to be able to like look back on this and always, you could just grow exponentially every single time you read through your writing, you know?
Yeah. How do you know if you're growing or not in life? Well, first of all, do you want to grow in life? That's the first question. My answer is yes. I already know yours is yes. Now, once you establish that, how do you know that you're growing, right? It's hard to see. It's like watching your hair grow in the mirror. You just can't do it. So when you write and you look back at, you can even look back just like a couple of weeks and you read what you wrote and you're like, wow, I feel a little differently now. And I kind of chuckle like, oh God, I'm so much better than that now. Or like, that's elementary. It's so funny how looking back at your writing, it shows your growth. And I think that like, if that's the only thing you get from writing, I think you should write.
Yeah. And really, I think for everybody, it's like you and I share writing in common. We both like to write, but I think some people do it through music. Some people do it through painting or, art or something like that. I think it's whatever your self-expression is, where you can see, because like if say it's painting and you see what you made a week ago and then you paint a new picture and it's going to be completely different, especially if you're in isolation. So like whatever your form of self-expression is, I think you can see those patterns and that growth. It's just, some things are easier to say with words than others,
That's a really good point. I know that all those forms are expression, but I've never considered measuring my personal growth through that. That's really cool. Yeah, I like that.
How long have I known you? 5 years?
Well, let's see. When did I first rent that Airbnb in Seattle from you?
Yeah.
Chicago. I was in Chicago and I was hitting up all these people on like Craigslist and whatever else, trying to find somebody that would rent to me because I like to prepare. I like to have a place to stay before I arrive. And everybody thought I was like some scammer. And I don't remember if it was like mentioning my brother or no, I think we mentioned that later. I think you rolled the dice on me.
I did. I completely rolled the dice on you. I did.
And I was like, dude, she's got cool vibes. Like I dig her. And then you had this space below the Airbnb that was an art space. And then you kind of turned it into like an art / like wine bar. And then you were having other things in life that were calling you. So I was like, dude, I will totally take this space over.
Yeah.
And then brother and I turned it into a bar. And honestly, it's so funny because you were the start of my Seattle situation, which just real quick, Seattle was my pivot point to get to Alaska. I stopped in Seattle because I needed to I wanted to make some more money before I came to Alaska. I didn't want to come here and be broke. So you were kind of my entry, but also my exit, because I sold the bar. Yep. And that's what allowed me to come up here and do what I'm doing. You know what I mean? So it's like, you were like the start, and essentially that bar that space we took over and built out turned into what brought me up here. So it's really interesting to look at that way.
Yeah, it's actually, it's fascinating. It's like, it's like, I envision it, and I wrote a kid's book about this, but when like two stars, like, swimming around, or two birds or something flying around, and they collide, and it's so random. It's like, it never really makes sense when it happens. You taking over that space for me, it was an art space, and it was awesome. But you're right, my energy and my life was needing to move in a completely different direction. I had just had my third child, and it was a crazy time for me. So like you and your brother, taking it was like what I needed to get to the next phase. And it's what you needed to get to the next phase. And now we're here back again. And a lot of these things are making sense, but when it was happening, it wasn't making sense.
Totally. Yeah. It's good that you recognize that you wanted to put your energy somewhere else. I'm a big believer in that. I don't care how invested I am in a project. If I have a different calling or something pulling me away from that, I answer it. And I've always done that. And it's led me to some awesome situations in life. I think a lot of people feel tied. Well, but I have this space, or I'm trying to make this art bar, or whatever, you know, I can't leave it. But what about my house? I said, well, sell your house. You know, like, you have a dream, go do it. You have to. And I appreciate that about you. I mean, you just talked about writing kids' books, and you're all over the place, and it's awesome. Oh, no, it's great, because I'm the same way. And, you know, some people might want to label it as ADD or ADHD or whatever. And I think I call it living life. That's what I call it. I have a different sensory of I get bored easily. And I don't think I labeled anything, and I don't think I need a pill for it. I think I need experiences that are more fulfilling to me. You got to believe in yourself. We are super capable people. You know, like, you know, not to go backward, but when people ask me about those negative temperatures, like, how are your eyes not frozen over, and how do you, I really don't have an answer. And it's the best answer I have is what I told you, is that, like, I'm too busy focusing on other stuff. And I think that if you're focusing on what matters, or your mantras, then that's what's going to get you through, right? Because to me, the more extreme a situation is, the better of a story you're going to be able to tell. And it doesn't even have to be a story that you're telling other people, but it's just a story for yourself. I don't care who knows my story. I like having my own stories. You know, yep. There's so many situations where I'm climbing a mountain or something, and it gets tough. And I naturally want to, I don't want to say quit, but I'm doubting it. I'm doubting myself, maybe, or the situation altogether. Like, why do I need to climb this? What's the point of this? But that kind of stuff pushes me more, and it makes me want to get up there. And man, you have such a better story to tell when you do finish it. When you get home, your bed feels so much better. Everything feels so much better. And I sleep on like a log bed that I made. And it's just logs with a little, I think I have about 2.5 inches of foam on top of it with a sleeping bag. And that is the most comfortable bed, which we should mention. I know you get heady in a lot of topics, and you like to go deep into the mind. So there's something that we noticed. And when I say we, it's something I noticed, and I never thought it was worth mentioning. The crew came out, and I think every single crew member that's been up there has mentioned it on their own. And we kind of all collectively came together around a fire, and it was like, wow, like, you have that experience too? So we all sleep like a rock. Like, I mean, my head hits that pillow, lights out. I'm like a light switch. And it sounds like everybody else is like that. You sleep so well up there. And we always question, is it the cold? Is it the no noise? Is it the darkness? What is it? And I don't have an answer for you, but I have some ideas. And one of them is, we have no ties to civilization, even if we wanted to. Even if I had a bill or some sort of something lingering over my head, taxes to do, I can't do them. There's nothing I can do about it. So you learn to kind of cut those ties. There's just nothing you can do about it. So I think that, like, you're forced to cut every single tie, and you start tapping into our past, where we didn't have any ties to technology, to the modern world. And you start becoming this primal being. You know, you look at like a grizzly bear, it doesn't sit there and toss and turn all night, and because it's got stuff on its mind. It might toss and turn because it ate something it shouldn't have or whatever, but it doesn't have anything on its mind. It goes straight to sleep. And that's what we're doing up there. And the dreams we have, that's a whole nother topic. I don't want to ramble.
I want to hear. No, I want to hear about it. Like, you are telling the perfect person. Like, I really want to hear about the dreams. I do, because this is part of our collective consciousness. And the more we talk about it, because we're all communicating, and you saying that you cut your ties when you're out there is true. You've in a way kind of cut your telepathic ties. And but you're tapping into them at a completely different level. And that level, that's the next level shit. And that's the stuff I want to know about.
I feel way more connected with our ancestors, if that's the right way to say it. A lot of people think like what I'm doing is weird, it's not normal, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, I entertain them. But if you think about it, we've been doing what we're doing now in this modern world for a speck of time versus how we used to live for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. What I'm doing is relearning the ways of our ancestors, because it's in me to know, to want to feel how they felt and to live like they felt so simply. And yeah, there's a lot of uncomfortable moments, but a big part of it for me is what's going on up in my head. What was going on in their head when they were stalking their food? What happens if they didn't get food? There's so many questions like that. I think what I'm doing is more normal than sitting at a bus stop on your phone watching traffic go by. Like, to me, that's not normal. And I'm not opposed to it. I understand why we're where we're at right now. I'm not hating on it, but we've been doing that for such a short amount of time versus living kind of a nomadic-ish lifestyle. And I think that's why we get restless in life. I think that's why we need all these things to distract us and keep our minds occupied, is because we're living stationary. Like, hey, let's pick a place and stay there forever. I think that's bananas. I think that we've never been that way. We always followed food. We've always followed the resources. And we don't do that anymore. The resources are all brought to us, packaged up and sent to our doorstep. So the dream thing, the dreams are insane. I'm not kidding. I'm going to sound like some goofball, but I've had, when I'm alone, I'll speak for when I'm alone. I've had dreams where I've woken up, but I was unaware that I was awake. And I wasn't sure what was reality and what wasn't. And that's that whole, like, you don't have anybody to bounce it off of. I didn't have a friend or somebody there to be like, hey, Johnny, how's it going? And oh, right, reality check. I don't have that. And there were times where my mind was slipping a little bit. And when I say slipping, I don't even know how to word that. It's not necessarily a negative thing. It's kind of just unsure. Where I was saying, you can let that affect you, or you can capitalize on it. And you can not capitalize on it, but you can learn from it and grow from it and do so much with it. Embrace it. You can embrace it. And that's what I ended up doing. And I love it now. But it can be dangerous. It can be really dangerous. You hear people that go out into the bush and their mind starts to slip and they don't catch it. And they start doing some weird stuff, like, right. Like his volleyball on that one movie where he's talking to a volleyball, like that's an example of your mind slipping. And I could see so easily how that could happen. But I embrace my mind slipping and I learn and grow from it. So it doesn't really affect me as much. But there was times where, so my mind was kind of getting a little mushy, a little funky. And I woke up and it was hard. It could be hours before you kind of really realize that you're awake. It's this weird state in between sleep and reality. And I think it's because you don't have anybody to bounce it off of. You don't have a text message to look at and see like, oh, cool, yeah, it's my brother or whatever. Really hard to explain. I've never tried to explain it before. And I think over the years to come, I'll have a better way to describe it. So. Well,
you're in the middle of this right now, so you're still processing. Like after my isolation that I had in Russia, it took me 10 years before I was able to write my feelings, and it was, when you tap into that ancient knowledge, it's it is a little earth-shattering and mind-blowing, and your priorities change, and you just think of the world in a different way. And so it can take a while to process. And I think that's perfectly, it's actually really healthy, because it means that you are growing, and you're right, like in the next 10 years, what you're going to do after that, I don't even know. I actually have no idea, because you're about as random as I am.
I take that as a compliment. What were you doing up in Russia? That sounds awesome.
Do you really want to know?
I want to know.
I was traveling with a group of energy workers, shaman, wisdom keepers, musicians, an ex-CIA person, and we were regrounding Earth's energy after the planet, this is scientific, had shifted off its axis in about, I think, 2010. And so this event had been prophesied by a lot of indigenous people all over the world, and they all felt called to go to what the indigenous people, they call the Altai Mountains, the navel of the planet. And so we were going to the navel of the planet to reground Earth's energy grid. One day when the eagle of the north, which is the Altai people, North American people, they're the eagles, meets the condor from the south at the center of the planet, then healing can begin. And so that's what the Colombians were, the condors, and they're a special group of people from El Corazon. They're called the Kojimamos, and they had never in 2,000 years of their history that they knew of ever left the island. And so they came with us in secrecy. That was like actually the weirdest part about it, is we weren't able to say that they were coming with us on any social media, on any media. And I was there to document it. I went to school for journalism, and so I was there on a documentary project to capture this moment in history that was supposed to be a really big deal. World, like this needed to happen very powerfully and very deeply. And there was a woman from Seattle who she organized a meditation group all over the world. There were over 1 million people who meditated to ground Earth's energy while we were there. And there was even, I know in Seattle, like closest to my house, I think like 200 people showed up in Edmonds to group meditate during this event. So it was a really powerful moment in history, but I didn't get to document it the way I wanted to, because of a lot of things that kind of came between me and my job that I went to do. But I realized that my job that I went to do wasn't about the job at all. It was about my growing. And it was something, it absolutely changed the course of my life. And ever since, I've just been trying to make sense of it and, see what is my purpose. I know I have a high level purpose. It wasn't a coincidence I was there, even though at that time I didn't consider myself an energy worker per se or anything. I do now, but these coincidences and these things that we follow, and when we follow our heart, are really powerful. And I feel like that's what you're doing.
Poke some questions at them. That sounds fun. That's a really interesting group. That's cool. It's only like this crazy shit that you do. Can you get a group of that dynamic?
Yeah.
Kudos. And then secondly, so the Earth, I'm assuming that you guys are under the assumption that the Earth is ungrounded, and then
yeah.
How did you come to that conclusion?
Well, so you can say it in a lot of different ways. Me saying that it's ungrounded, so there's a scientific way that you can look at it. And in the scientific way, which is not how my brain works, so I'm not going to be saying this right, but the Earth's axis was like, at this degree. And then something happened and it actually went to like this degree, like a different degree. And it was a physical change that the earth made, like the planet. Our planet is alive as well as us. And so our planet made this shift. And in order for us to stay on this planet, we also have to shift because our reality all of a sudden has changed. We're in just a slightly different angle, you know. It's and so the indigenous people see it as we're connected as one. We are a part of the planet. Mother Earth is us and we are Mother Earth. You know, we're all like 70 or 80% water, and you know, we share more than we have different. And so so we have to shift too. And we were assisting in that shift, and that shift is still going on, and it's getting stronger and stronger. And it's been really fun as each like soul of planet keeps like hopping on board our like cosmic train. And it's yeah, it's kind of fun to be at kind of the forefront of that and seeing it happen for so long.
So for the show, it's docu-series. They don't even like the term reality. It has they have a lot of integrity. They've never, you know, I've read comments, they're funny to me. I don't take them serious. People are like, oh, it's scripted or this and that. And it's really, really funny for me to read that, because absolutely nothing on that show is scripted. And I can only speak of my personal time on camera, but I know the crew and their integrity as well. They work on all the different locations and there's no script whatsoever. Absolutely not. That said, when we're having you know, what they call like a just like the little interview where they're asking me questions, I've learned about myself. And the first producer that came out there, Patrick, I was resistant to it at first because I didn't trust. And I was like, why is he asking me these questions? What does he want to know about me? Like, why is he digging into me? And at one point he realized that I was being resistant. And he said, you know, you can look at this as therapy. And boom, it changed my perspective. True. It's like therapy. You're answering questions about your personal life to the world. And that's an intense thing. And I have learned a lot about myself. And don't remember how this ties in to what we were just talking about. But I've learned a lot about myself by listening to myself talk through this guy's questions. Where were we going with that? Where did you leave off?
You know, I don't even remember.
That's perfect. Isn't that the way this is supposed to be, right? This is
totally.
This is conversation. Two people having fun, talking about shenanigans. This is great. I love it.
It's exactly, so I called it a virtual campfire because, you know, if I could pick all the people in the world that I've met, who would I want around my campfire? You want people who can tell good stories. You want people who think deeply about life. You want people who are funny. You want musicians because they'll play you music. You want that like crazy dancer chick who just like
belly of society, you know, all the like the vagabonds, the misfits, the washed up characters, the artists. Yeah, a lot of people, you know, question like, isn't it dark there? So Alaska is a big state. I think it's a fifth of the size of the lower 48s.
Wow.
So if you took the United States and you put Alaska on top of it, I think it's about a fifth of the size.
Wow.
It's, you know, a lot of different climates, a lot of microclimates. It's like saying the United States is cold or the United States is warm. It's like, well, what part are you in? So Alaska is similar to that. You know, there's rainforests, there's desert. I live in an Arctic desert. Where I'm at, I have 9 inches of precipitation a year.
Wow.
Because I'm 70 miles north of the Arctic Circle, and I get about 8 2.5 weeks of no sun, and I don't see the sun for that long. Sun doesn't go overhead where I'm at. It just circles around. It comes up a little bit and it just circles. That's all it does is it's a halo, yeah. So it never comes overhead. You never have to look up to see the sun where I'm at. You constantly see shadows, and they just move all day, all around.
Whoa.
What's cool is the sun, it slowly rides the horizon, and it's trying to show itself above the mountains. And although the sun doesn't come up, you have a fiery orange, red, pink, magenta colored sky for hours.
Wow.
So that sunset you might see where you're at, I see that for about 5 hours.
That's amazing.
Just hanging out, trying to come above the horizon, but it never rises. And every day that magical orange sky, is lessened by nine minutes. So every day it's lessened by 9 minutes, to the point where you don't even see orange anymore. But yeah, I lose 9 minutes a day, which is almost an hour a week, coming up to the winter solstice. Once I hit the winter solstice, I gain 9 minutes of sun nearing the horizon a day. I hope that clears it up. I hope I didn't make it more.
No, I think you explained it perfectly. My question is, how do you keep track of time?
How do I keep track of time? The sun. That's it. You don't need.
No, but when it's dark for that many days in a row, like how are you, like, do you get disoriented? Do you forget what day it is?
That plays into the whole slipping of the mind. And that's where you get confused of, are you awake? Are you sleeping? What part of reality am I in? Is dark? Is it night? Is it morning? And that's a huge contributor to that topic I had brought up. I have a little clock in my cabin. I used to not have it, and when Nat Geo came up there, they had a little clock. So I've inherited their clock, because I was like, this I might need this. This might help me. That I used to be a lot more anti-technology. Listen to me, I'm talking about a battery operated little clock, and technology. That's my technology over there, right? Like, I'm anti-clock, but that's like the extent of my technology up there, and I'm grateful for it now. I do bring my phone, but it's useless. It does nothing but takes pictures, and it barely does that, because as soon as you pull it out of your pocket, you can watch your battery just go from whatever percentage to nothing.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'll charge it with National Geographic. They have a generator. I don't have a generator up there. They have generators to power their camera equipment. So I'll plug it in, sneak it in there, and they'll charge it for me. I don't keep it charged all the time, but I sometimes do. And I do it for photos, because I want to share my experiences with the world. Now that I have social media, it's kind of like a responsibility. And I give them so much credit, because we were filming in temperatures that they've never filmed in. They've never experienced these. The producer was from LA. It's funny, I say this with all due respect. She weighs as much as my dog. And we were joking about it, because she's got an awesome attitude. She's got a great personality, and she's so petite, and she's just this cute petite gal. Her name's Carrie, and are you warm? Like, that was a question we would ask often, but she had such an awesome attitude. The whole crew did. A lot of them, the coldest temperature they had seen was in the -40s. I think one guy, Tyler, had seen in the -50s. And this isn't wind chill. I'm talking static air temperature.
Yeah, just standing there.
Couldn't even tell you what the wind chill is. It's probably a lot colder. They did such an outstanding job that we never took a day off filming. We just pushed through it, because our attitudes were good. The energy of the Arctic was so alive. The caribou, the wolves. To me, that's what kept those batteries and those cameras alive for the 20-minute increments that they did. And then we'd have to go swap batteries. They'd have to go put their cameras in my cabin, because my cabin stays toasty. it was a wild experience, and I don't have the words to express how awesome they were up in those extreme temperatures, where a plane or a safety helicopter couldn't even come in. You know, it's
impressive. I think that National Geographic is an awesome organization that does really positive work all over the world. I mean, just think of all the things that they've captured, and I can only imagine that the people behind the scenes are just as magnificent as the places they're at, because it's a reflection of what they're doing and the energy they're putting into it. So I think it's really what a cool, unique experience for you to be able to have that, and kind of be a part of history in a way, you know, coronavirus. And you know, I don't know, do you guys wear masks? Like, because in Seattle, we all have to wear masks. So like, what's
we tested before we fly out, and we hop on the little bush planes. We have our masks on. I go out before them, or, you know, if I'm in town, and, but regardless, I'm up there before them. They will show up wearing masks, and we wear them until our test results conclude that we are all negative. And then even so, we kind of keep about a, you know, close to the 2-week period, just in case something happened on that bush flat or whatever. We play it pretty safe. They all have their own tents, and once we break that kind of 9 to 12, maybe 14-day period, we feel a little bit more safe. We're still not hugging, you know, but we end up being probably the safest place you could be during these times.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, and it's pretty wild. The other, like, probably the last question people would ask me a lot is like, what I bring up there with me. And I'm extremely minimal. The more things I bring, the more I have to be responsible for, and the more like relationships I have to have with my belongings. And I'm very, very minimal person. You know, I don't use minimalist or any of these hip terms that have concise definitions. I think that's silly. I just am who I am, and I tend to be minimal. And when I go up there, I bring, clothing wise, just about 2 of everything. Pretty simple. I bring, food wise, people ask a lot. I don't bring much food up there. I challenge myself to live a way that our ancestors have lived for a long time. Now, I can't fully do that, but I do as close as I can get. I don't bring seasoning with me for the food. Bring like snacks and candies and stuff like that. I take a little bit of flour, I take a little bit of rice, and a little bit of beans, and that's all I bring food. I eat about 90% of my diet is caribou. I consider myself ethical, consider myself sustainable. I wouldn't hunt a species that doesn't have large numbers. The caribou herd that I hunt, there's 2 of them that converge right where my camp is. One of them's about 60,000 strong, and the other one's bounces between 100 and 120,000 strong.
What?
Yeah, so that's a big reason why I picked my location. I know that was one of the first questions you'd asked, of like, what made me go up there, and it's because the food, the resources. I use every bit, and if you watch the episodes, you'll see I use every bit of those caribou. I use the hide, I use the hooves, I use the brains, I use the eyeballs, I use the tongue. I eat all that stuff before I even eat the meat. And I think that's just kind of the DNA within me, that's what we did. When you first killed an animal, you ate the fatty parts, you ate the super nutritious parts, and then you ate the meat. You know, for thousands of years, that's how we've done it. And that's how the animals do it too. I see the wolves, I see the bears, I see how they do it, and they do it that way as well. I'm not copying them. I'm just doing what feels right. And it happens to parallel what the natural world is doing. And that's the whole point of this, is to I'm not trying to beat nature. I'm not above any animal out there. I'm trying to ride the wave with them. I'm trying to be part of them, right? I'm trying to exist with them. I don't, just because we have technology, I don't think that necessarily puts us above these animals. I don't think I'm better than any critter out there. Now when I eat, I'm done eating and I feel rejuvenated. I feel energized mentally and physically because I have a connection. Every time I take a bite of a caribou, I know what hunt that caribou came from. I remember dragging that caribou miles across tundra or frozen landscape. I remember gutting and butchering that caribou in negative 45 degrees with my fingers about to fall off. I remember the bear that I danced with. I remember all of these stories, and mentally I feel very good, and physically I feel very strong. I feel like this is the food that I'm supposed to be eating. It matches my lifestyle.
Yeah. It probably matches your soul too, like you're a whole brain thinker, that I've been, a Navajo wisdom keeper that I know uses that term, whole brain thinking, and it always resonates with me because it's like, there's all these stereotypes, like artists are like not good at certain parts of life and stuff, and I just call BS on all that, because truly, if you're a whole brain thinker and you can be creative and you can be logical, we have the ability to use more parts of our brain than what I think most people use. And so you've really tapped into that both sides, and then even the extra sensory things like the telepathy and the connectedness, and all those kind of ethereal sort of ideas, but you've really tapped into it.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good feeling.
It is. I'm realizing how lucky it was that I caught you, because I didn't realize that I had such a short window to make this connection.
Nailed it. It's bizarre, and it's funny. As soon as I get back to town, I'm like, oh, this is great. Like everything is just so colorful, and like music is like, wow, and it's because I deprive myself of all these things. But it fades off in like 5 days when you hear, yeah, it fades away pretty quick. And I still appreciate being here, but I have a lot of business to up north still. I'm learning so much. I just, as soon as I come back to town, I want to get back up there. And yeah. I can't believe you caught me either. That's pretty bizarre. I have memories. I have childhood memories that I didn't know I had stored in my brain.
Yep.
And of course, like occasionally in your lifetime, these come to your mind, right? Like, oh my God, like that's crazy. But when I'm up there and I'm completely detached and alone, I could have as many as one a day versus like, when's the last time you had a memory of something you didn't ever think about since the day it happened when you were 5 years old?
Yeah, it doesn't happen all that often.
Usually memories are kind of recurring.
Mm-hmm.
I have memories that they store in my mind that I question, wait, did that even really happen? How come I'm just now thinking of that? And it happens so frequently. It's another planet up there. It's another connection. It's a deeper connection. I have so much to learn up there. I'm stoked.
Yeah, it's so cool. I'm extremely grateful that we were able to talk. I know that it's now I'm understanding that it was, I just had an idea in my head and I'm like, oh, message Johnny. And then you answered back. And so I was like, sweet. Cause I don't know. You're one of those people that I want around my campfire, and I wanted to hear what you were up to because it was cool.
I like your campfire idea. I think it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to my virtual campfire. I'm humbled and grateful, and with heartfelt thanks, thank you for listening all the way to the end. I hope that it caused a vibration or a thought or sparked something inside of you to make a positive change.